One of the most controversial topics in video games, whether you're a PC gamer or a console gamer, is digital rights management, or DRM for short. Now, I'll keep it real with you. This isn't something I ever really super looked into. I remember there was a big instance with the Xbox that happened back in like June or something. Everyone was outraged about DRM. Our British friend MVG has made many videos talking about this, but I never really super looked into it because I don't know, I just wasn't super interested. I didn't really understand it. It seemed like more of something along the PC gaming side of things, so it was something that I just overlooked. But today I decided to actually investigate what DRM is and why so many people hate it, because well, DRM is making its way to the Nintendo Switch, and a lot of people are outraged about this. And since I talk a lot about Switch stuff on this channel, it's time to educate myself, and it's time to potentially educate you, because DRM is coming to the Nintendo Switch, and this seems like a very scary thing for a multitude of reasons. Now, I'm sure you're wondering, well, what is DRM? Maybe you're like me and you don't really follow stuff like that, the technological side of things, and in theory, it's not a bad thing. There's a company called Denuvo who basically is the champion for this DRM technology stuff. And like I said, in theory, it's not necessarily all that bad. It's to combat piracy. Now, when you're talking about piracy, obviously PC games get pirated a lot because just how the marketplace is for it. When you look at video game consoles, you can't really pirate the PS5 right now or the Xbox Series X, but there is one system that you can pirate, and that is, of course, the Nintendo Switch. So looking at this little press release thing that was done here, basically they're launching the first Nintendo Switch emulator protection technology to safeguard games launched on the Nintendo Switch. Funnily enough, the website is actually down right now, but many people have been talking about it, and they were able to source the information based on this. And essentially what they're trying to do is combat piracy on the Nintendo Switch. And I understand that. I understand that because, like I said, unlike the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X, it's pretty damn easy to emulate the Nintendo Switch on your computer or even your Steam Deck. Now, not all games are going to run great, not all games are going to look great, but there's a large multitude of games that do look great and do run great and do play great, and sometimes you can even do more things with them. Look at things like Breath of the Wild, which has gotten so many different texture mods, and you can do this, that, and the other with the game, completely transform how the game is to be played. Like I said, I'm an idiot when it comes to stuff like piracy and emulation and stuff, but one day I decided I wanted to try my hand at seeing if I could emulate some Nintendo Switch stuff of games that I already own on my PC. And really, it took me like 20-30 minutes to set it up, and then I downloaded a game that I already owned, and then I played the game that I already owned. And it was kind of confusing to me because I was like, wow, this was very easy. Now, Nintendo systems inherently have always been a victim of, you know, piracy and things like that. I'll admit it, I was a pirate back on the Nintendo DS. You had there was a little Max Media Drive, I believe it was called, and you could like have donor cartridges of a game, and then you could download any game you wanted, put it on the Max Media Drive, and then play it on your Nintendo DS without having to buy the game. I was a kid, I didn't have money, so that's what I did. So I'm a guilty pirate. Lock me up, throw me in jail, throw away the key. But I did still buy games for the Nintendo DS. It was kind of like, well, if I wanted to try a game, I would do that. Of course, you can emulate pretty much any Nintendo system that is already released. Obviously, things like the 3DS are a little bit trickier because of the 3D stuff, but it's not hard to emulate 3DS games on an actual 3DS or on a computer. Just on a computer, you're going to lose that 3D technology. So you're probably sitting there thinking, well, what's the drawback of this? Why does everyone hate DRM technology? Because it seems like this is a good thing for companies, especially smaller companies. You know, a company like, you know, first-party Nintendo games, they're gonna sell. I don't think they're really worried about piracy, but smaller games, independent games, that's something that's kind of their lifeline, their bloodline. You know, it's what they need in order to survive. So what are the drawbacks of DRM? Well, that's where things get very interesting, because there's two main drawbacks with DRM technology, and they both will negatively impact the Nintendo Switch in massive ways. So the first reason that people are very against DRM technology is because of the fact that although they say it's not a resource hog, it's a resource hog. it makes games run worse on the intended platform that they are on. So you'll be playing a game and you'll have a bunch of frame rate drops and frame rate skips and, crashes of these games that aren't supposed to be happening, but it's happening because of the DRM technology that's being used to protect the game from being pirated. What's funny is there's tons of instances where DRM stuff, because the way that PC games work is some platforms and launchers have DRM and some don't for specific games. So when you play a pirated version of a game, it actually runs better than the DRM version of the game because it doesn't have the DRM stuff attached to it. And that should be very concerning because, let's be real, Nintendo Switch games as they stand right now don't necessarily run all that great at times. There are first-party games such as Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity that struggle. The game struggles. The game goes below 30 frames per second. Could you imagine something that's also tied into the games now to where it'll make the game struggle more? The games will play worse, the games will look worse, the games will crash more because of this DRM technology that's going to be instituted into them. That should be a very scary thing for people because I want better performance. I don't want worse performance and, lay my head down at night knowing that, oh, that DRM technology is protecting these companies. That makes me feel good. I want a good experience. And if I have to go down another avenue to get a good experience, it might make me look at, doing something like that in order to play these games that I'm interested in, that I want to play. But I think the bigger issue with this is, let's go back to that Xbox instance that happened earlier this year. So in this write-up done by TechRaptor.net, they said on May 6th, Xbox tweeted that some users were struggling to access their Xbox games and content. This issue persisted throughout that weekend. Several times, Microsoft announced that the problem was fixed, only for users to pipe up that this actually wasn't the case. Many gamers were still having problems, not only with the games they've already bought, but also purchasing content via the Xbox Store or playing games via the cloud. Eventually, it seems the problem was fixed, but one question remains. Why did this happen? The answer, in a nutshell, is Xbox DRM system Microsoft uses. So essentially what's happening is the games will constantly be looking for an online connection with your Xbox in order to make sure that the game can be played, to make sure that you're playing a legitimate thing or something like that. And to me, that's crazy. Maybe it works on these consoles, on something like the Xbox One or the Xbox Series, the PlayStation 5. Okay, you're playing these things at home. Okay, I get it. You're probably connected to your internet connection. Yes, if you take your system with you on the road and you don't have an internet connection, whatever, that's a story for another day. I can definitely see some errors with that, but for the most part, you're playing your Xbox connected to the internet. You're playing your PlayStation 5 connected to the internet. Your Nintendo Switch, you can take it with you wherever you go. Places that don't have an internet connection. Have you ever tried to play your Nintendo Switch and it was not your main console? I have multiple Nintendo Switch consoles. So my Nintendo Switch OLED is not linked up to be the main one. The main one is my old one because that's where I have most of my stuff on it. Whenever I go to play a game on that, I actually have to connect to the internet in order for the game to make sure it can be played. Now, it's a pain in the ass. I have to take out, if I'm at my grandmother's house or something, I have to take out my cell phone, basically make a little internet connection, a hotspot on that, so that the game can check and make sure that it can be played, and then I can turn that hotspot off. But if this DRM stuff ends up coming along and becoming commonplace on the Nintendo Switch, the game will constantly look for that internet connection. The game will constantly look for that internet connectivity to make sure that you're playing a legal version of the game. And that seems like it'll be very detrimental to a lot of Nintendo Switch games that are single player games or games that do not require an online connectivity beyond just checking to make sure I can play the game. So I guess the question is, what can you do about this? Now, you as a consumer, you can always support, non-DRM versions of the game. You could be outspoken about DRM versions of a game that exist, but how is this going to work on the console side of things? Are developers going to want to take that risk of potentially alienating people in order to protect their IPs? Because like I said, let's be real, let's bring everything back together here. It's very easy to emulate the Nintendo Switch on your computer. It's very easy to emulate the Nintendo Switch on your computer and make a more advanced experience than you can get on the console right now. So I feel like this is going to be something that is going to persist with the system, and I think it's something that is going to be talked about for a very long time. I understand DRM stuff now. Maybe I didn't quite understand it with systems that I always have connected to the internet. Anyways, you can get into the preservation aspect of things, because that's a whole nother story. How is this going to work in 10, 15 years? God only knows. The video game industry is going to be in shambles by then. But when it comes to a console that's also a hybrid, that's also a handheld that you can take wherever you go, and you're going to need this always online internet connectivity in order for the game to check and make sure you're playing a legal copy of the game. Plus, it's going to be a resource hog and potentially make these games run worse. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens. So let me know in the comment section down below. First off, let me know in the comment section down below if I said anything stupid or incorrect in this video, because like I said, I'm very new to DRM stuff. I'm not a PC gamer, so it's not something that really affects me all that much. And when it comes to my consoles, I constantly have them plugged in, so it's not something that really, you know, hits me very often. But I can see the bigger picture, and I definitely see the bigger picture now with the situation. And as always, guys, thank you for checking out this video. Give me your thoughts in the comment section down below, because it's going to be a very interesting topic. I feel a very interesting topic with a lot of different takes, and you know, no take is correct, no take is incorrect. It's all opinions at the end of the day, but this just kind of worries me. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next video. Later.